Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Now, I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Picture the most ordinary Tuesday morning you can think of. Maybe you're sipping coffee, checking your phone, or watching sunlight stream through your window. Everything feels perfectly normal, perfectly reliable. The sun rises just like it has for 4.5 billion years. But here's what's absolutely mind-blowing, and honestly a little terrifying, about this moment I'm describing. If our sun's nuclear heart suddenly stopped beating right now, you wouldn't know it for exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Think about that for a second. 8 minutes and 20 seconds. That's barely enough time to make breakfast or listen to 3 songs on the radio. But in this story we're about to explore together, those 8 minutes become the most precious, most heartbreaking minutes in human history, because they're the last minutes of natural light our species will ever experience. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening right now, in this very moment, as our sun works its ancient magic 93 million miles away. Deep in the sun's core, where temperatures reach 27 million degrees Fahrenheit, 600 million tons of hydrogen fuse into helium every single second. Every second. Can you wrap your head around that number? 600 million tons. That's like converting the entire mass of a mountain into pure energy, and it happens over and over and over again, 43,000 times every minute. This process has been humanity's most reliable companion since the very first human looked up at the sky. More dependable than seasons, more constant than tides, more faithful than any earthly promise. For 4 billion years, our sun has never missed a beat, never taken a day off, never even flickered, until today. But here's the thing that makes this story so beautifully tragic. When the impossible finally happens, when those nuclear fires suddenly, inexplicably stop, the universe doesn't immediately announce the catastrophe. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second, which sounds impossibly fast until you consider the vast emptiness it has to cross. 93 million miles of pure vacuum stretch between the sun and Earth. So even light, the fastest thing in existence, needs 8 minutes and 20 seconds to complete that journey. Which means that right now, as I'm telling you this story, we're living in those final 8 minutes. And scattered across our planet, people are experiencing their last sunrise, their last shadow, their last glimpse of natural light, completely unaware that everything is about to change forever. Let me introduce you to 3 families whose stories will break your heart and inspire you in equal measure. In Tokyo, it's 6:47 in the morning. Akiko Tanaka is pushing her 4-year-old daughter Yuki on the swing set at Ueno Park. The early morning sun filters through cherry blossom branches, casting dancing shadows on the ground that make Yuki giggle with pure joy. She's trying to catch the shadows with her tiny hands, convinced she can grab them if she swings high enough. Akiko laughs, that warm sound mothers make when their children discover something magical in the ordinary world. "Hiya, Mama! I almost caught one!" Yuki shouts, her black hair streaming behind her like a banner of pure happiness. Akiko gives the swing another gentle push, watching her daughter reach toward dancing patches of light and shadow. She has no way of knowing that in exactly 7 minutes and 33 seconds, shadows will become extinct on Earth. That the interplay of light and darkness her daughter finds so enchanting will end forever. That this moment, this perfect, ordinary moment of childhood wonder, represents something humanity will never experience again. The sun above them continues its ancient performance, but 93 million miles away, something impossible is happening in its core. The nuclear furnace that has burned for 4.5 billion years simply stops. Not gradually, not with warning signs or cosmic fanfare. One moment, hydrogen atoms are fusing into helium and releasing the energy that powers every living thing on Earth. The next moment, nothing. The sun's core begins collapsing immediately. In less than 7 seconds, it shrinks from the size of Jupiter to the size of a small city, sending gravitational waves rippling through space-time at the speed of light. These waves race past Mercury, past Venus, toward Earth, carrying the news of our sun's death in a language only the most sensitive instruments could detect. But the light that left the sun's surface 8 minutes ago continues its faithful journey, carrying the last energy our star will ever give us. Meanwhile, in Iowa, 62-year-old Frank Morrison is walking through his cornfields, checking the progress of what will unknowingly become Earth's final harvest. The corn stands 7 feet tall, reaching toward the morning sun with the same determination that has driven crops skyward for millions of years. Frank runs his weathered hands along the stalks, feeling their strength, their readiness for harvest in another 2 weeks. "Looking good this year," he murmurs to himself, a habit developed from 40 years of farming alone since his wife passed. The irony is almost unbearable. This will indeed be his best crop ever, and his last. 6,000 miles away, gravitational waves from the sun's collapsed core wash over Earth like an invisible tsunami. Every atom in Frank's body, every molecule in his corn, shifts by less than the width of a proton. Somewhere in laboratories around the world, incredibly sensitive detectors register this cosmic scream for help, but the data won't be analyzed for hours. By then, it won't matter. Frank continues walking his rows, mentally calculating yields, completely unaware that photosynthesis, the process that built every kernel of corn, every blade of grass, every tree on Earth, has exactly 5 minutes and 41 seconds left to function. Those corn plants reaching so hopefully toward the sky are about to lose the energy source that created them, sustained them, and gave meaning to their entire existence. And in London, Sarah and David Chen are sharing a late-morning picnic in Hyde Park. They're celebrating their 5th wedding anniversary with sandwiches and terrible jokes, the kind of comfortable happiness that develops between people who've learned to find joy in ordinary moments. Sarah is attempting to photograph David with the Serpentine Lake in the background, but he keeps making ridiculous faces that send her into fits of laughter. "Stop it! I want one serious photo," she protests, but she's laughing too hard to hold the camera steady. "Define serious," David grins, crossing his eyes and sticking out his tongue. "What makes this moment so achingly beautiful is its ordinariness. No dramatic music, no sense of impending doom, just 2 people in love enjoying sunshine and sandwiches." Sarah finally gets her photo, David looking genuinely happy, sunlight caught in his dark hair, the lake sparkling behind him. She checks the image on her camera's display and smiles. This photograph, captured at 11:53 and 47 seconds London time, will become one of the most important images in human history, not because of its composition or artistic merit, but because it's quite possibly the last photograph ever taken in natural sunlight. Sarah has no way of knowing that she's documenting the end of an era, preserving a moment of light that will never return. 3 minutes and 12 seconds remain. Above all 3 families, above every human being on Earth, the sun appears exactly as it always has. A brilliant disk of light, steady and warm and eternal. But that light left the sun's surface when everything was still normal, when nuclear fusion still powered the cosmic engine that made life possible. The sun they're seeing is a ghost, a bright phantom carrying the memory of a star that has already died. The physics of what's happening defies human comprehension. Inside the sun's core, the sudden cessation of fusion has caused temperatures to drop from 27 million degrees to merely a few million degrees in seconds. Without the outward pressure from nuclear reactions, gravity wins decisively. The core collapses catastrophically, compressing matter to densities found nowhere else in the solar system. If you could somehow scoop up a teaspoon of this collapsed material, it would weigh as much as a mountain. But here's what's truly remarkable about these final minutes. Life on Earth continues exactly as it should. In Tokyo, Yuki finally manages to catch a shadow, closing her small fist around a patch of darkness between her fingers. In Iowa, Frank discovers a perfect ear of corn and carefully removes it to check the kernels, each one plump with sugars created by sunlight. In London, Sarah and David pack up their picnic, planning to walk to the Diana Memorial and then maybe catch a movie. Across the globe, 4 billion years of evolution continues its timeless dance. Flowers track the sun's path across the sky through heliotropism. Bees navigate by polarized sunlight, collecting nectar that exists only because of photosynthesis. Migrating birds adjust their course using solar compasses that have guided their ancestors across continents for millions of years. A teacher in Sao Paulo points to the sun during an astronomy lesson, explaining to 30 eager 10-year-olds how nuclear fusion works, completely unaware that the process she's describing ended 4 minutes ago. The sun, she says, will burn for 5 billion more years. It's the most reliable thing in our universe. In Mumbai, a street photographer captures children playing cricket, their bodies casting sharp shadows on sun-baked concrete. The contrast between light and dark creates the composition that makes his photograph beautiful. But shadows require light, and light requires a living star. On a farm in Kenya, solar panels silently convert the sun's energy into electricity, powering a water pump that brings life to crops during the dry season. The panels will continue working for exactly 1 minute and 37 seconds more, then become as useless as decorative tiles. 1 minute remains. In observatories around the world, astronomers are going about their morning routines, completely unaware that they're about to witness the most significant astronomical event in human history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez at the Mauna Kea Observatory in Hawaii is calibrating equipment for tonight's observations, planning to study distant galaxies billions of light-years away. She has no idea that our own star, the one that makes her work possible, has already joined the ranks of dead suns. 30 seconds. The International Space Station passes over the Pacific Ocean, its solar arrays gleaming in what will soon be remembered as the last normal sunlight to touch human technology. Commander Jiang Wei floats in the cupola, watching Earth rotate below him in all its blue and green glory. From his vantage point 250 miles above the surface, Earth looks eternal, perfect, alive with the energy of its parent star. 10 seconds. In Tokyo, Akiko checks her watch and realizes they need to head home for Yuki's lunch. She stops the swing and helps her daughter down, both of them squinting slightly in the bright morning sun. 5 seconds. Frank Morrison reaches the end of a corn row and turns back toward his farmhouse, mentally planning the rest of his day. 3 seconds. Sarah and David Chen walk hand in hand away from their picnic spot, shadows stretching behind them across the grass. 2 seconds. 1 second. And then, in the space between heartbeats, between one moment and the next, the last photons that will ever leave our living sun complete their 93 million-mile journey and strike Earth's atmosphere. What happens next changes everything. The light that has illuminated human civilization for its entire existence, the energy that powered every plant, every ecosystem, every breath of oxygen you've ever taken, simply ends. But here's the thing that will haunt you. For just a moment longer, none of our 3 families know. Akiko is lifting Yuki off the swing. Frank is planning his afternoon. Sarah and David are deciding which movie to see. They have no idea they've just experienced the last natural sunset Earth will ever know. In exactly 0 seconds, the age of sunlight ends forever, and the age of eternal darkness begins. The moment arrives without fanfare, without warning, without the courtesy of a gradual fade. One instant, Sarah Chen is checking her camera settings in Hyde Park's dappled sunlight. The next instant, she's standing in absolute darkness so complete it feels like she's been suddenly struck blind. "David?" Her voice comes out as a whisper, then louder, panicked. David, I'm right here. His hand finds hers in the blackness, but his voice carries the same confusion, the same rising terror. What just happened? Is this some kind of eclipse? But this isn't an eclipse. This is something far worse, far more permanent. Across the globe, 7 billion people experience the same horrifying transition. Day doesn't fade into night. It vanishes. Between one heartbeat and the next, the sun's final gift of light simply runs out. In Tokyo, Akiko Tanaka is helping Yuki down from the swing when darkness swallows them whole. The 4-year-old's delighted laughter turns into a confused whimper. "Mama, where did everything go?" Akiko's hands shake as she pulls Yuki close, her mind struggling to process what's happening. The playground around them has vanished into blackness so absolute that she can't see her own hand in front of her face. "It's okay, baby," she whispers, but her voice betrays her fear. "Mama's here. Everything's going to be okay." But everything is not going to be okay, and on some primitive level, every living thing on Earth knows it. In Iowa, Frank Morrison stops mid-step between his corn rows. The familiar landscape of his farm, the red barn, the weathered fence posts, the endless green expanse of corn reaching toward what was, seconds ago, a brilliant blue sky, has disappeared into void. The silence is overwhelming. No birds singing, no insects buzzing. Even the wind seems to have stopped, as if nature itself is holding its breath. What in the hell? Frank's voice trails off as he realizes he can't even see the ground beneath his feet. He reaches out, tentatively, feeling for the corn stalks he knows must be there. His weathered fingers brush against leaves, confirming that the world still exists even if he can't see it. But something else is wrong. The temperature. It's already dropping. Here's what's happening that none of our families understand yet. The moment the sun's light vanished, Earth's energy balance shifted catastrophically. For 4.5 billion years, our planet has received 1,300 watts of solar energy per square meter. 1,300 watts. That's enough to power about 13 bright light bulbs for every square meter of Earth's surface. And all of that energy just stopped. The temperature begins dropping immediately. Not gradually over hours or days, but measurably within minutes. 2 degrees Fahrenheit in the first hour alone. It doesn't sound like much, but consider this. That's the beginning of a temperature drop that will eventually reach -400 degrees Fahrenheit. The kind of cold that makes liquid nitrogen look warm. But the temperature change is just the beginning. Within 3 minutes of darkness falling, every plant on Earth ceases photosynthesis. Think about what that means. Every blade of grass, every tree, every microscopic piece of algae in the ocean, they all stop producing oxygen. They stop converting carbon dioxide into the sugars that form the base of every food chain on the planet. 4 billion years of evolution suddenly hits a wall. In cities around the world, the response is immediate and chaotic. In downtown Tokyo, millions of people stumble through streets they can no longer see. Car accidents happen within seconds as drivers find themselves navigating by sound alone. Traffic lights become meaningless. Street lamps automatically triggered by the sudden darkness create isolated pools of light that only emphasize the vast emptiness beyond. Akiko manages to fish her phone from her pocket, its screen providing a tiny circle of blue light in the overwhelming darkness. But when she tries to call for help, she discovers something terrifying. The cell towers are overwhelmed. Millions of people are trying to make calls simultaneously, and the networks simply can't handle the load. Her call to emergency services drops immediately. Around them in Ueno Park, she can hear other families calling out to each other, children crying, adults shouting questions that no one can answer. The sound of confusion and fear ripples across the city like a wave. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. The animals know something humans don't. Dogs begin howling in a way their owners have never heard before. Cats disappear into whatever hiding places they can find in the darkness. In zoos around the world, lions pace restlessly while elephants trumpet in distress. Birds, confused by the sudden night, attempt emergency roosting but can't find their usual perches in the absolute blackness. Meanwhile, nocturnal animals emerge, thinking their time has come. Owls leave their daytime roosts. Bats pour out of caves, and nighttime predators begin hunting. But they quickly discover this isn't normal night. There's no moon visible, no stars. Earth's sudden release from solar orbit means our planet's position has shifted, making every constellation unrecognizable. The night sky that has guided navigation for millennia now shows an alien pattern of stars. In London, Sarah and David Chen huddle together on what they hope is still the grass of Hyde Park. Sarah's camera, which moments ago captured what may be the last photograph in natural sunlight, now serves as their only source of light via its LCD screen. The tiny display shows David's smiling face from their anniversary photo, a haunting reminder of how quickly everything has changed. "Look at this," David whispers, pointing at his smartphone. "GPS isn't working. It can't get a satellite fix. That's because the satellites themselves are in chaos. Earth's sudden gravitational shift has altered orbital mechanics. Communication satellites designed to hover over specific points on Earth's surface find themselves drifting off course. The International Space Station, which was peacefully orbiting 250 miles up just minutes ago, now faces a crisis as its solar panels register zero input for the first time since installation. Commander Zhang Wei floats in the cupola, staring down at Earth in absolute shock. From space, the planet looks like a Christmas ornament that someone just unplugged. City lights are beginning to bloom across the dark continents like desperate fireflies, but they appear scattered, disorganized, and surrounding everything is an emptiness that shouldn't exist. The familiar blue glow of Earth's atmosphere illuminated by sunlight has vanished, leaving only the cold light of distant stars reflecting off ice and ocean. "Houston, we have a situation up here," Zhang reports into his radio, his usually calm voice cracking. The entire Earth just went dark simultaneously. All solar panels showing zero input. Request immediate guidance. But Houston is dealing with its own crisis. Mission Control has switched to emergency power, and their giant screens show a world gone mad. 5,300 commercial flights were in the air when darkness fell. 5,300 aircraft suddenly flying blind, their pilots forced to navigate by instruments alone while passengers panic in cabins that have gone from peaceful daylight to absolute darkness in the span of a heartbeat. Air traffic controllers around the world are working by emergency lighting, trying to guide planes to safe landings at airports that have become islands of artificial light in an ocean of black. The logistics are nightmarish. Runways need to be illuminated, approach patterns recalculated, and somehow every plane in the sky needs to land before fuel runs out. But here's what's truly terrifying: the power grids. Within 15 minutes of darkness falling, electrical demand spikes by 300% as 7 billion people instinctively reach for light switches. Every lamp, every overhead light, every flashlight on Earth gets turned on simultaneously. Power plants that were designed to gradually increase output to meet evening demand suddenly face unprecedented load spikes. In Tokyo, rolling blackouts begin within an hour. Akiko and Yuki find themselves in double darkness. Armor D5, the natural darkness of a dead sun, and the artificial darkness of a failing power grid. Emergency services, overwhelmed by calls and unable to see the scope of the crisis, start prioritizing hospitals and essential services. Frank Morrison, still standing in his cornfield in Iowa, watches emergency vehicles race down the distant highway, their flashing lights the only mobile sources of illumination in the landscape. He can't know it yet, but those vehicles are responding to calls about people trapped in elevators, car accidents at intersections with failed traffic signals, and medical emergencies complicated by the inability to provide normal lighting. The psychological impact is immediate and overwhelming. Humans are creatures of light. Our circadian rhythms, our mood regulation, our basic sense of orientation, all of it depends on the cycle of day and night that has remained constant throughout human evolution. But this isn't night. Night comes with the promise of dawn. This is something else entirely, an ending without the possibility of renewal. In hospitals around the world, emergency generators kick in, but they're not designed for indefinite operation. Dr. Maria Santos at São Paulo General Hospital realizes that the hospital's backup power will last maybe 18 hours under normal load, but with every light in the building turned on and heating systems working overtime, as temperatures drop, they might have 12 hours at most. The children's ward is the most heartbreaking. Dozens of young patients who were looking out windows at sunny morning skies just minutes ago are now crying in confusion. The nurses move between beds with flashlights, trying to maintain calm. But how do you explain to a 5-year-old that the sun has stopped working? "Where did the day go?" asks a little boy named Carlos, reaching toward the window as if he could somehow find the missing light. "When is it coming back?" Nurse Santos doesn't have an answer because she doesn't understand what's happening any more than Carlos does. Nobody does. The very idea that the sun could simply stop functioning violates everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. Weather systems, driven by temperature differentials created by solar heating, begin collapsing almost immediately. The jet stream, that great river of air that drives weather patterns across continents, starts weakening. Hurricanes lose their energy source. Cloud formation changes as the hydrological cycle disrupts. Within 6 hours, meteorologists notice something unprecedented. Weather is beginning to stop, not changing, not shifting, stopping. Wind patterns that have existed for millions of years simply fade away as the temperature differentials that drive them disappear. But perhaps the most poignant moments happen in individual homes. In a suburb of Mumbai, 8-year-old Raj was drawing a picture of his family standing under a smiling sun when darkness fell. Now he sits in the glow of his mother's phone, adding black crayon to his drawing, covering up the yellow sun he'd worked so carefully to make perfect. "Mama," he asks quietly, "did we do something bad? Is that why the sun went away?" His mother, Priya, has no answer. How do you explain astrophysics to a child? How do you tell him that sometimes terrible things happen for no reason at all, that the universe can be indifferent to human hopes and dreams? As the first day of permanent darkness continues, a horrifying realization begins to dawn on scientists and government officials around the world. This isn't temporary. Whatever has happened to the sun, it's not going to fix itself. Emergency meetings are called, but they take place in conference rooms lit by generators and flashlights. At NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, Dr. Jennifer Park stares at data that makes no sense. Solar radiation meters show absolute zero. Gravitational wave detectors registered massive disturbances exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago. But the sun's visible disk, when viewed through emergency telescope equipment, still appears normal through the instruments, because those instruments are still receiving light from when the sun was functioning. "It's like looking at a photograph of something that's already dead," she whispers to her colleague. "The economic implications are staggering and immediate. Stock markets can't open. They depend on normal lighting and communication systems that are failing. Supply chains that move food and essential goods around the world rely on drivers who can see the roads. Solar power, which provides electricity to hundreds of millions of people, has become completely useless overnight. But individual human resilience begins to show itself too. In Tokyo, Akiko and other parents in Ueno Park organize themselves into groups, using their phones' flashlights to create moving circles of light. They begin walking toward the nearest subway station, reasoning that underground areas might offer better shelter and more reliable lighting. 4-year-old Yuki, with the adaptability of childhood, stops crying and starts helping by holding her mother's phone steady. "Look, Mama," she says, pointing the light at a bench they need to navigate around. "I can be your helper." In Iowa, Frank Morrison demonstrates the practical wisdom of rural life. He makes his way carefully back to his farmhouse, counting steps and using his intimate knowledge of his land to navigate in the dark. Once inside, he lights oil lamps and candles, backup lighting sources he's maintained for decades in case of power outages. His house becomes a beacon of warm light visible for miles across the darkened countryside. And in London, Sarah and David Chen discover something remarkable about human nature. As they carefully make their way toward what they hope is the park's exit, they encounter other confused couples and families. Without discussion, they naturally form a group, combining their phones' lights and helping each other navigate obstacles. "Stay close," David calls out to a family with small children who've joined their impromptu convoy. "We'll get through this together." But as the hours pass and the temperature continues dropping, a terrible understanding begins to settle over humanity. This isn't a temporary emergency that will resolve itself. This is a fundamental change in the nature of reality itself. The sun, which has been humanity's most reliable constant, has betrayed us. By the end of the first day without dawn, average global temperature has dropped 8 degrees Fahrenheit. Tropical regions that have never experienced freezing weather watch their first frost form. In temperate zones, what should be warm autumn air carries the bite of early winter. Emergency services report hundreds of thousands of injuries from people falling, walking into objects, or being involved in accidents in the darkness. But they also report something else: unprecedented cooperation. Strangers helping strangers. Communities organizing themselves to share light sources and food. Humanity's response to the crisis reveals both our vulnerability and our strength. As night falls, though night has no meaning anymore, Akiko and Yuki have made it to a Tokyo subway station that's running on emergency power. Hundreds of people fill the platform, sharing food, comforting frightened children, and trying to make sense of what's happened. Frank Morrison sits by his farmhouse window, oil lamp flickering, looking out at darkness so complete it seems solid. He can hear his neighbors' generators running and see their lights, scattered points of human defiance against the vast emptiness. Sarah and David Chen have found shelter in a London Underground station with dozens of other people. Someone has a battery-powered radio, and they're listening to emergency broadcasts that raise more questions than they answer. But none of them know the worst part yet. None of them understand that the temperature will keep dropping, that within a week it will be below freezing everywhere on Earth, that the air itself will begin to change as gases start condensing out of the atmosphere. They don't know that they've just lived through the last normal day in human history. The age of sunlight is over. The age of survival has begun. By day 3, the world has changed in ways that would have been unimaginable just 72 hours earlier. Earth's average temperature has plummeted below freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and falling fast. But it's not the cold that's killing people yet. It's the chaos. In Tokyo, Akiko Tanaka huddles with Yuki and 47 other people in a subway maintenance tunnel, sharing body heat and the dwindling power from their collective phones and flashlights. The child who just 3 days ago was chasing shadows in Ueno Park now sleeps fitfully against her mother's chest, wrapped in coats donated by strangers who've become family through shared desperation. "Mama," Yuki whispers in the darkness. "When will the sun come back?" It's the question every parent on Earth is facing, and Akiko still doesn't have an answer. Nobody does. The emergency radio broadcasts have stopped providing hope and started focusing on survival instructions. Conserve battery power, share food, stay together, find geothermal sources of heat. But here's what's truly heartbreaking. Outside their tunnel, Tokyo is tearing itself apart. Not from violence, but from the simple impossibility of maintaining a city of 37 million people without sunlight. The subway system, which normally moves 10 million people daily, has become a network of refugee camps. Every station platform, every tunnel, every underground space that offers protection from the dropping temperature is packed with people who have nowhere else to go. The infrastructure we take for granted requires things we never think about. Traffic signals need to be visible. Construction crews need to see what they're building. Delivery trucks need to navigate streets. Food distribution systems depend on workers who can read labels and load trucks safely. When you remove light from the equation, modern civilization doesn't adapt. It simply stops functioning. Frank Morrison, on his farm in Iowa, has become an inadvertent refugee camp leader. His farmhouse, with its wood-burning stove and oil lamps, has attracted 23 neighbors whose homes depend on electricity for heat. They've organized themselves into a survival community, rationing the canned goods from Frank's pantry and burning furniture to keep warm. We need to think about getting to somewhere with geothermal heat. Frank tells the group gathered around his kitchen table, their faces lit by flickering candles. Yellowstone. Those hot springs don't need the sun. But getting to Yellowstone means traveling 800 miles through a landscape that's becoming more dangerous by the hour. Roads are clogged with abandoned vehicles, cars that ran out of gas, trucks that slid off icy pavement, emergency vehicles that crashed in the darkness. The interstate highway system, marvel of modern engineering that it is, was never designed for navigation without any external light sources. In London, Sarah and David Chen have discovered that survival sometimes means making impossible choices. They're part of a group of 200 people who've taken shelter in the Piccadilly Circus underground station, where emergency lighting and body heat keep the temperature just above freezing. But food is running out, and venture outside means navigating London streets in absolute darkness with temperatures dropping toward 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The government's saying they're evacuating people to Iceland, David reports, returning from a scouting trip to street level. Geothermal power plants. But the airports, he shakes his head. Most flights have been grounded, too dangerous to navigate. This is the cruel mathematics of survival without sunlight. Iceland, with its volcanic activity and geothermal energy, has become one of the few places on Earth where large populations might survive long term. But getting there requires infrastructure that depends on visibility, navigation systems that need satellites, and fuel supplies that are rapidly dwindling as refineries shut down. Meanwhile, the International Space Station has become humanity's most important observation post, and what Commander Janeway sees from orbit is heartbreaking. Earth, which just days ago was a blue and green marble of life, now appears as a dark sphere dotted with scattered points of light. Most of the lights cluster around geothermal areas, Iceland blazing with activity, the western United States glowing around Yellowstone, New Zealand's North Island showing signs of concentrated population movement. But vast areas of the planet have gone completely dark. Entire regions of Africa, South America, and Asia show no lights at all. It's not that the people have left, it's that they no longer have power sources to create light. They're out there in the darkness, struggling to survive in ways that space-based observation can't detect. Beijing's gone dark. Jiang reports to Mission Control, his voice carefully controlled. So has most of eastern China. I can see some activity around the Three Gorges Dam, but that's about it. The dam represents one of humanity's few advantages in this crisis. Hydroelectric power doesn't depend on sunlight, it runs on gravity and the water cycle. But even that's temporary. Without solar energy to drive evaporation, the water cycle itself is slowing down. Rivers are beginning to freeze from the surface down, and new snowfall stopped completely when atmospheric water vapor started condensing out of the increasingly cold air. By day 5, the catastrophe has moved beyond human tragedy into planetary transformation. Average global temperature has reached 10 degrees Fahrenheit, AT5, cold enough that exposed water begins freezing in most locations. But it's the atmospheric changes that are truly terrifying. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the astronomer who was calibrating equipment at Mauna Kea when the crisis began, now works by generator power in an underground facility, analyzing data that defies everything she thought she knew about planetary science. Earth's atmosphere is beginning to rain out, literally. Water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other gases are condensing and falling like snow made of air itself. The atmospheric pressure is dropping, she reports via radio to emergency command centers around the world. We're losing our breathing air to condensation. At this rate, sea level pressure could drop by 20% within a month. Think about what that means. The air you're breathing right now has a specific density that allows your lungs to extract oxygen efficiently. As atmospheric pressure drops, breathing becomes more difficult, like being at increasingly high altitude. Areas that are currently at sea level will soon feel like they're at 10,000 feet elevation, then 15,000, then 20,000. But humans are remarkably adaptable, and pockets of civilization are learning to fight back. In Tokyo, Akiko's group has made contact with other subway survivors and discovered something remarkable. The city's geothermal power plant is still partially operational. Deep beneath Tokyo Bay, engineers are working around the clock to redirect the plant's steam heating to the subway system. We might be able to create a warm zone, explains Tanaka-san, an engineer who joined their group. Connect tunnels, share heat distribution. We could support maybe 10,000 people. It's not much when you consider Tokyo's normal population, but it's hope. And hope, it turns out, is one of humanity's most powerful survival tools. Frank Morrison's group has grown to 60 people, as more neighbors abandon their cold houses for his farmstead. They've organized work details. Some people tend the fire constantly. Others venture out to scavenge supplies from abandoned homes. Still others work on reinforcing the farmhouse against increasingly harsh weather. But Frank knows their situation is temporary. The wood they're burning for heat won't last more than another week. The canned food they're rationing will run out in 10 days, and the temperature is still dropping, now at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and showing no signs of stabilizing. We leave for Yellowstone tomorrow, he announces at their evening meeting. I've got 3 trucks that'll run, enough fuel to make it if we're careful. Anyone who wants to come is welcome. It's a desperate plan. 900 miles of travel through darkened highways with temperatures that can kill an exposed person in minutes. But staying means certain death. While leaving offers at least the possibility of survival, the tragedy is playing out differently around the world. In equatorial regions that have never experienced freezing weather, entire populations are dying from exposure. Emergency services in Brazil, Nigeria, and Indonesia report casualty numbers that are simply incomprehensible. Millions of people in tropical climates had no cold weather clothing, no heating systems, no experience with freezing temperatures. But there are also stories of remarkable human cooperation. In Iceland, the government has opened every geothermally heated building to refugees from around the world. Reykjavik, normally home to 130,000 people, now houses over 2 million in schools, office buildings, and converted warehouses heated by natural hot springs. We share everything, reports Prime Minister Björk Eriksdottir in one of the few international communications still functioning. Food, shelter, heat. We are all human beings facing the same disaster. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, Maori communities with traditional knowledge of living off the land are becoming crucial leaders in survival efforts. Rotorua, built around geothermal springs, has become a beacon of hope for South Pacific populations. By day 6, the crisis has fundamentally altered human civilization. Money has become meaningless. You can't eat paper currency or burn credit cards for heat. Social hierarchies have dissolved. A corporate CEO's survival skills are worth less than a farmer's knowledge of food preservation. National borders have become irrelevant when the primary concern is finding geothermal heat sources that don't recognize sovereignty. Sarah and David Chen, along with their London Underground community, have made the decision to attempt reaching Iceland. A convoy of 7 buses, their windows covered with makeshift insulation, prepares to leave London for the ferry terminals. It's a journey that would normally take 18 hours. In current conditions, if they make it at all, it could take 3 days. "Look at this," Sarah says, showing David her camera one more time. The photo from their anniversary picnic, David smiling in Hyde Park sunshine, now looks like an artifact from a lost civilization. "I keep thinking this is all a nightmare, that I'll wake up and everything will be normal." But normal doesn't exist anymore. Normal was a sun that never failed, weather patterns that could be predicted, food systems that connected every corner of the globe. Normal was believing that technology and civilization had made humanity master of its environment. The International Space Station faces its own crisis. With solar panels generating zero power, the station runs entirely on stored battery power that's rapidly depleting. The 3 crew members, Jiang Wei from China, Elena Kowalski from Poland, and James Mitchell from the United States, have to make a terrible decision. "We have enough battery power for maybe 3 more days," Mitchell reports to Mission Control. "After that, life support fails. We need to use the Soyuz capsule to return to Earth, but landing navigation in these conditions. The problem is that spacecraft re-entry depends on precise calculations and communication with ground control. With many tracking stations offline and navigation satellites drifting off course, bringing the crew home safely becomes a nearly impossible challenge. But humanity's ingenuity shines through even in desperate circumstances. Amateur radio operators around the world have created an informal communication network, passing messages between survivor communities and helping coordinate rescue efforts. In Akiko's Tokyo subway community, a teenager named Hiroshi has figured out how to use car batteries to power a small radio station. "Anyone out there?" His voice broadcasts into the darkness. "This is Tokyo Underground calling. We have warm shelter and medical supplies. If you can hear this, we're in the Marunouchi Line tunnels near Tokyo Station." Similar calls echo from survivor communities around the world. Frank Morrison's group picks up radio chatter from Denver, where survivors are organizing convoys to Yellowstone. Sarah and David's London group receives updates from ferry operators who are still running boats to Iceland, despite the incredible danger of navigating in absolute darkness. By day 7, Earth's surface temperature has dropped to -10 degrees Fahrenheit on average. In some locations, it's much worse. The American Midwest, Frank Morrison's region, is experiencing -30 degrees. But ocean temperatures remain relatively warm. Water's thermal mass means the seas are cooling much more slowly than land. This creates its own problems. As the huge temperature differential between land and sea develops, unprecedented weather patterns emerge. Not the gentle weather systems we're used to, but violent, chaotic storms that appear without warning and dissipate just as quickly. Frank's convoy to Yellowstone faces one of these storms, a blizzard that comes out of nowhere, with winds that make navigation impossible and snow that falls so heavily it covers their vehicles in minutes. They're forced to stop and wait it out, burning precious fuel to keep their engines running and their heaters working. "This isn't normal weather," Frank mutters, watching snow pile up against the windshield faster than the wipers can clear it. "This is something else entirely." He's right. This is weather in a world without solar energy to drive normal atmospheric circulation. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and often deadly. But perhaps the most important development by day 7 is that humanity has begun to adapt, not just to survive, but to rebuild differently. In the geothermal sanctuary zones, people aren't just waiting for rescue, they're creating new communities designed for a world without sunlight. In Akiko's Tokyo underground community, they've established work crews that venture onto the surface during the slightly warmer periods, though warmer now means -5 degrees instead of -20. They're systematically salvaging materials from the abandoned city above, solar panels that can be rewired for battery storage, LED grow lights for underground farming, insulation materials to expand their warm zone. "We're not just surviving," Akiko tells Yuki as they tend to the first experimental mushroom farm in a converted maintenance room. "We're learning to live differently." 4-year-old Yuki, with the remarkable adaptability of childhood, has accepted this underground world as her new normal. She's learned to navigate the tunnels in darkness, to conserve battery power, to help tend the growing areas that might represent humanity's future food source. The week ends with humanity fundamentally changed. 90% of the world's population has died or is in the process of dying from exposure, starvation, or the breakdown of essential services. But the 10% who remain are concentrated around geothermal areas that offer genuine hope for long-term survival. The sun, which gave life to Earth for 4.5 billion years, has taken it away in just 7 days. But humans, the species that learn to make fire and build shelter and cooperate in groups, are fighting back. The first week without dawn has ended. The first year of the deep winter is about to begin. 1 month after the sun's betrayal, Earth's surface temperature averages -100 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, human spit freezes before it hits the ground. Exposed skin dies in under 2 minutes. The very air begins to shimmer and thicken as water vapor crystallizes into floating ice needles that make each breath a struggle. But here's what's remarkable about humans. We're still fighting. In the tunnels beneath Tokyo, Akiko Tanaka has become something she never imagined she'd be, a leader of the underground. Her community has grown to 3,000 survivors who've transformed abandoned subway stations into a functioning underground city. LED grow lights, salvaged from the surface and powered by the geothermal plant, cast an eerie purple glow over vertical farms, where mushrooms and sprouted seeds provide the only fresh food left on Earth. "Look, Mama." 4-year-old Yuki holds up a tiny green sprout with the pride of a child who's helped create life in a dead world. "I made it grow." Yuki has never seen a tree, never felt grass under her feet, never experienced sunshine. To her, this underground world of tunnels and artificial light is simply reality. She's part of the first generation of children who will grow up in humanity's new world, a world without sky. The surface above them has become an alien landscape. Tokyo's skyscrapers still stand, but they're encased in ice so thick it turns them into abstract sculptures. The famous cherry trees of Ueno Park, where Yuki once played, are frozen solid, their cellular structure destroyed by cold that would make Antarctica feel tropical. The city that once housed 37 million people is now a crystalline tomb, beautiful and deadly. But Akiko's community thrives below. They've learned to recycle every resource with an efficiency that would have been unimaginable in the world of abundance they remember. Human waste becomes fertilizer for their mushroom farms. Exhaled carbon dioxide gets captured and used to help plants grow. Even body heat is channeled through makeshift ductwork to warm sleeping areas. "We're not just surviving," Akiko explains to newcomers who arrive half frozen from the surface. "We're learning to live differently. This is our world now." Frank Morrison's story took a different turn. His convoy to Yellowstone never made it. On day 9, while fighting through another impossible blizzard somewhere near Denver, their vehicles finally succumbed to the brutal cold. Engine blocks cracked. Fuel lines froze solid. Batteries died despite their best efforts to keep them warm. They were found 3 weeks later by a rescue team from the Yellowstone settlement, 63 people in 4 vehicles, arranged in a defensive circle with their last supplies shared equally among them. Frank's journal, discovered clutched in his frozen hands, provides a heartbreaking record of their final days. Day 11. Sarah's baby got sick. "We're giving her all the extra blankets, but the cough is getting worse. Temperature outside is -40. Can't run the heaters anymore. Only half a tank of gas left between all our vehicles." Day 14. Lost contact with Yellowstone on the radio. Sarah's baby died this morning. We buried her in the snow next to the road. Marked the spot so someone might find her someday. Have to keep moving. Day 17. Engines won't start. Temperature is -60 now. We're burning seat cushions and anything else that'll catch fire. Still have some food. Tom thinks we're maybe 200 miles from Yellowstone. Might try to walk it when the weather clears. Day 20. No weather clearing. This isn't normal winter. This is something else. Emma says it's like being on another planet. She's right. Earth isn't our world anymore. Tell them we tried. Tell them we never stopped trying. The final entry is in different handwriting. Emma, Frank's neighbour, who survived 2 days longer. Frank died, peaceful in his sleep. We shared his last energy bar between us. If someone finds this, the folks in Yellowstone need to know. We saw lights coming from Cheyenne Mountain. Military survival bunker, maybe. There are people there. Don't give up. Their sacrifice wasn't meaningless. The convoy's radio transmissions before they went silent provided crucial navigation data for other groups attempting the journey to geothermal sanctuaries. 3 other convoys made it to Yellowstone, partly because Frank's group had mapped the safest route through Colorado's frozen highways. In London, Sarah and David Chen's story becomes one of the great survival epics of the New World. Their group's journey to Iceland took 18 days, a trip that should have taken 18 hours. They travelled by bus convoy through a Britain transformed into an Arctic wasteland, stopping to shelter in abandoned buildings, burning furniture and books to stay warm, eating whatever frozen food they could scavenge from empty stores. The English Channel crossing nearly killed them all. Ferry services had officially stopped, but a grizzled captain named Thomas Hartwell kept one vessel running out of pure stubbornness. Been sailing these waters for 30 years, he told the desperate refugees crowding his boat. Not going to let a bit of cold weather stop me now. The ferry's navigation systems had failed, so Captain Hartwell guided them across 20 miles of open water, using a compass and his knowledge of the tides. The sea hadn't frozen yet. Its thermal mass meant water temperatures remained just above freezing, but ice storms made the crossing treacherous. Waves crashed over the deck, instantly freezing into slick sheets that made walking impossible. "Stay below," David ordered the other passengers as the ferry pitched through 10-foot swells. "Anyone who falls overboard won't survive 2 minutes in this water." Sarah spent the entire crossing taking photographs with her dying camera battery. Images of people huddled together for warmth, of ice forming on the ferry's railings, of the English coastline disappearing into frozen mist. She didn't know why she kept taking pictures, maybe some instinct that someone needed to document this transformation of their world. When they finally reached Iceland, the sight that greeted them was both inspiring and overwhelming. Reykjavik, normally home to 130,000 people, now housed over 3 million refugees from across Europe and North America. Every building heated by geothermal energy had been converted into communal living space. Schools housed families and classrooms. Office buildings became vertical apartment complexes. Even the famous Blue Lagoon geothermal spa had been converted into a refugee processing centre. "Welcome to New Iceland," said Astrid Johansdottir, a volunteer who met them at the dock. Population, everyone who made it this far. The Icelandic government had made an extraordinary decision in those first weeks after the sun died. They opened their borders completely, declaring that anyone who could reach their shores would be given shelter, food, and citizenship. It was logistically impossible and economically insane, but it was also profoundly human. "We have heat from the earth itself," Prime Minister Björk Eriksdottir announced on one of the last international radio broadcasts. "We have geothermal power that doesn't depend on the sun. We can share it. We must share it. This is not about nations anymore. This is about humanity." The result was a society unlike anything in human history. Former corporate executives worked alongside Syrian refugees to maintain geothermal heating systems. Japanese engineers collaborated with Icelandic farmers to design indoor growing facilities. Children from a dozen countries played together in communal daycare centers, learning to speak a mixture of languages that was becoming the common tongue of the new world. Meanwhile, in space, the International Space Station faced its own moment of truth. With only hours of battery power remaining, the 3 crew members made a desperate decision to attempt re-entry using dead reckoning navigation. They had no choice: to stay and die when life support failed, or risk a landing that could kill them just as easily. Commander Zhang Wei piloted the Soyuz capsule through a re-entry unlike any in the history of space travel. Without ground control guidance, without GPS navigation, without even visual landmarks since Earth's surface was shrouded in darkness and snow, he had to rely on the capsule's internal systems and his own skill to find a safe landing zone. Houston, this is Soyuz, beginning deorbit burn. If anyone's listening down there, we're aiming for the coordinates we discussed. See you on the ground. The capsule punched through Earth's atmosphere like a meteor, its heat shield glowing cherry red as it shed the enormous speed of orbital velocity. Through the tiny porthole, Zhang caught glimpses of the world they were returning to, a planet wrapped in ice, with only scattered points of light to indicate where human civilization still flickered. They landed in a frozen field in Kazakhstan, their parachutes dragging the capsule across ice-covered ground before finally coming to rest against a snowbank. When the rescue team found them 6 hours later, all 3 astronauts were alive but suffering from severe hypothermia. "How's the world doing?" Elena Kowalski asked weakly as rescuers loaded her into a heated truck. "Still fighting," replied the rescue team leader. "Still fighting." By the end of the first month, the scope of the catastrophe was becoming clear. Satellite imagery, when it was available from the few remaining operational satellites, showed a planet transformed. The green and blue marble that had sustained human civilization was now white and grey, hot ice covering the continents, frozen clouds obscuring much of the atmosphere. But human settlements glowed like jewels in the darkness around every geothermal source on Earth. Yellowstone National Park, once a tourist destination, now housed 800,000 survivors in underground facilities and heated surface buildings. The park's geysers and hot springs, previously admired for their beauty, had become literally the difference between life and death. In New Zealand, the geothermal regions around Rotorua supported 500,000 people in underground complexes that extended deep into the earth. Traditional Maori knowledge of living sustainably off the land proved invaluable in creating closed-loop systems where nothing was wasted. "Our ancestors knew how to live with the earth," explained Aroha Williams, a Maori leader who'd become one of the settlement's primary organizers. "Now we're learning to live inside the earth." The most remarkable development was the emergence of a new type of human community. Without the distractions of consumer culture, without the pressures of competitive economics, without even the basic assumption that there would be a tomorrow like today, these geothermal settlements developed social structures focused purely on survival and cooperation. Resources were shared according to need rather than ability to pay. Work was assigned based on community survival rather than personal ambition. Decisions were made collectively because individual success meant nothing if the community failed. In Akiko's Tokyo underground community, they developed what they called the Warm Council, a governing body where every major decision had to be approved by representatives from each work group: food production, scavenging, medical care, childcare, engineering, and security. "We tried democracy," explained Dr. Sato, a former university professor who'd become the community's medical officer. "But democracy assumes you have time for debate and luxury for disagreement. We have neither. We have consensus based on survival." The children adapted fastest of all. Yuki, now speaking fluent English alongside Japanese from interacting with international refugees who joined their community, had never known scarcity. She'd never experienced waste. To her, every piece of food was precious, every warm space was sacred, every working light was a miracle. "When I grow up," she told her mother one evening as they tended their mushroom garden, "I want to be a light maker, someone who makes sure the dark never comes back." Akiko smiled sadly, knowing that the dark wasn't something that could be fixed by human determination. But she also felt pride watching her daughter adapt to this harsh new reality with such resilience and hope. The surface world above them told a different story. Atmospheric pressure had dropped 25% as gases continued condensing out of the supercooled air. Breathing at sea level now felt like being at 15,000 feet elevation. Many survivors needed supplemental oxygen just to function normally. Weather patterns had become completely alien. Without solar energy to drive normal atmospheric circulation, storms appeared and disappeared randomly. Temperature variations could swing 40 degrees in a matter of hours as different air masses collided without the organizing influence of the sun. Most disturbing of all, the ocean surfaces were beginning to freeze. Starting from the polar regions and moving toward the equator, a sheet of ice crept across the planet's water at about 50 miles per day. The Arctic Ocean froze completely within 2 weeks. The North Atlantic ice sheet reached as far south as Ireland by month's end. But deep beneath the ice, life continued. Hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, powered by Earth's internal heat rather than solar energy, maintained thriving ecosystems. Tube worms, giant clams, and exotic bacteria continued their ancient existence, completely unaware that the surface world had ended. "They're inheriting the Earth, Doctor," Rodriguez observed via radio from her underground observatory in Hawaii. "Chemosynthetic life forms that never needed the sun anyway. They're probably wondering where flukes. All the organic matter falling from the surface went." She was referring to the fact that with photosynthesis stopped, the rain of dead plants and animals that normally fed deep-sea ecosystems had ceased completely. The deep ocean creatures were experiencing their own version of the catastrophe, not from cold, but from the sudden loss of their food supply. As the first month ended, humanity had achieved something remarkable. Despite losing 90% of the world's population, despite the complete collapse of technological civilization, despite living through what was essentially the end of the world, humans had survived. More than survived, they had adapted. The geothermal settlements weren't just refugee camps anymore. They were becoming the foundations of a new type of civilization, one built around cooperation rather than competition, one designed for sustainability rather than growth, one that understood, in the most visceral way possible, that human survival depended on working together and living within planetary limits. "We're not the same species we were a month ago," Sarah Chen observed, looking out over the bustling refugee city that Reykjavik had become. "We're something new, something that's learned to live without taking the sun for granted." David nodded, watching children from a dozen countries play together in the heated common areas, speaking a mixture of languages and sharing toys made from salvaged materials. Maybe we needed to lose everything to remember what really matters. But they all knew this was just the beginning. The temperature was still dropping, the atmosphere was still condensing, and Earth was beginning a journey through space that would take it far from any hope of finding another star. The first month of the deep winter had ended. The first year was just beginning. 6 months into our cosmic orphanhood, Earth hurtles through space at 67,000 miles per hour, 200, no longer orbiting but flying straight into Wolfand. The void like a bullet fired from the solar system. We're a rogue planet now, joining the estimated billions of sunless worlds drifting between stars, but we're the only one known to carry the defiant spark of conscious life. From the observation deck of New Reykjavik's central tower, EZS-3, a geothermally heated skyscraper that serves as both living space and symbol of human persistence. Sarah Chen watches through reinforced windows as Earth's alien sky tells the story of our exile. The stars wheel overhead in patterns no human eye has ever seen before. Constellations that guided navigation for thousands of years have vanished, replaced by stellar arrangements that look like abstract art painted by an indifferent universe. "Look at that," she whispers to David, pointing upward through the crystal-clear air that's resulted from the complete absence of atmospheric moisture. Orion's gone. The Big Dipper, the Southern Cross, they're all gone. We're seeing stars that were behind the sun when we had a sun. The view is breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Without atmospheric distortion and light pollution, the night sky blazes with billions of stars invisible from the old Earth. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a river of diamonds, so bright it casts shadows on the frozen landscape below. But these aren't our stars anymore. We're strangers in our own galaxy, orphans wandering between the familiar and the unknown. Earth's trajectory will take us completely out of the solar system within 2 years. Jupiter, which once appeared as a brilliant evening star, has faded to just another point of light. Saturn's rings, visible through binoculars during Earth's former life, have vanished into the distance. The Sun itself is the star that nurtured life for 4.5 billion years, now appears as just another star in the constellation we've started calling the Lost Home. But here's what's remarkable about humans. We don't just survive, we create meaning from catastrophe. In the tunnels beneath Tokyo, Akiko Tanaka's community has evolved into something unprecedented in human history. What began as a desperate refugee camp has become the prototype for post-solar civilization. 5,000 people now live in a network of connected subway tunnels and underground chambers that extend for miles beneath the frozen city above. "Welcome to Tokyo Deep," Akiko says to the latest group of surface survivors, 12 people who somehow made it through 6 months of minus 150-degree temperatures by living in the basement of a heated department store. Population: everyone who refuses to give up. Tokyo Deep represents humanity's first permanent underground city. They've developed closed-loop systems that would make spacecraft engineers jealous. Nothing is wasted, everything is recycled, and every person has a role essential to community survival. Children attend school in converted maintenance rooms, learning mathematics by calculating food rations, and studying biology by tending mushroom farms that now provide 30% of their nutrition. 6-year-old Yuki has become something her mother could never have imagined, an expert in subterranean agriculture. She can distinguish between 17 different types of edible mushrooms by touch alone, knows exactly how much water and nutrients each variety needs, and has helped develop new growing techniques that increase yields by 40%. "This one's ready for harvest, Mama," she says, carefully picking a cluster of oyster mushrooms that will feed a family of 4 for 2 days. "And look, the spores are starting to spread to Chamber 7. We'll have a whole new growing area next month." The child who once chased shadows in Ueno Park now creates light instead of needing it. She and the other children have adapted to underground life with remarkable efficiency, developing enhanced hearing and spatial awareness that lets them navigate the tunnel. Systems in complete darkness when necessary. But Tokyo Deep is just one of 27 major geothermal settlements that now represent the totality of human civilization. Each has developed its own culture, its own innovations, its own solutions to the challenges of post-solar survival. In Yellowstone Deep, 800,000 survivors have carved a vast underground complex into the volcanic bedrock beneath the former national park. Their society has become intensely focused on engineering and technical innovation. Teams of scientists and engineers work around the clock to develop new technologies for their sunless world. More efficient LED growing systems, better insulation materials made from salvaged resources, geothermal tap systems that can access heat from deeper in the earth. We're not just maintaining pre-catastrophe technology, explains Dr. Jennifer Park, the former NASA scientist who now leads Yellowstone Deep's research division. We're developing post-catastrophe technology, systems designed specifically for a world without external energy sources. Their greatest achievement is the Deep Heat Project, a system of pipes and heat exchangers that taps directly into Yellowstone's magma chamber, providing enough geothermal energy to support 1 million people indefinitely. It's dangerous work. One miscalculation could trigger volcanic eruptions that would kill everyone in the settlement, but it's also their ticket to long-term survival. New Zealand's Rotorua Deep has taken a different approach, focusing on biological innovation. Using traditional Maori knowledge combined with advanced biotechnology salvaged from research facilities, they've developed new strains of mushrooms and other fungi that can grow in the trace amounts of light provided by bioluminescent bacteria. Our ancestors lived sustainably for 1,000 years before Europeans arrived, explains Aroha Williams, now the elected leader of Rotorua Deep's Council. We're applying those same principles to survival in a post-solar world. Work with nature instead of against it, even when nature has fundamentally changed. They've created the first successful underground ecosystem that doesn't depend on external inputs. Mushrooms feed decomposing organic matter, bacteria break down waste products, and carefully managed populations of insects and worms maintain soil fertility for small-scale crop production. It's a closed biological loop that could theoretically sustain itself for centuries. But perhaps the most remarkable development is the emergence of inter-settlement communication and cooperation. Amateur radio operators have created a global network that connects all 27 major settlements, allowing them to share innovations, coordinate resource exchanges, and maintain the social connections that keep human culture alive. Tokyo Deep calling Yellowstone Deep, Hiroshi broadcasts from his underground radio station every evening at 8 p.m. local time. This is our daily check-in. We're still here, we're still fighting, and we've got some new growing techniques to share with you. These radio conversations have become more than practical communication. They're the threads holding human civilization together across the planet. Children in different settlements become pen pals, scientists collaborate on research projects, and communities share stories, songs, and poetry that help maintain cultural continuity. The International Space Station crew, now safely recovered and living in Kazakhstan's geothermal settlement near Lake Balkhash, provides a unique perspective on Earth's journey through space. Commander Zhang Wei has become the unofficial astronomer for the human species, tracking Earth's trajectory and monitoring for signs of other celestial bodies. We're heading toward the Orion Arm, he reports during his weekly broadcasts to all settlements. In about 50,000 years, we'll pass within 2 light-years of Proxima Centauri. Not close enough to establish orbit, but close enough that someone with a really good telescope might notice we're not supposed to be there. His calculations reveal the scope of humanity's cosmic displacement. Earth is traveling at 17 miles per second relative to the galactic center, fast enough to cross the entire solar system in less than 2 years. We're headed into deep space, into the vast emptiness between stars, where temperatures approach absolute zero, and the only energy sources are the radioactive decay of heavy elements deep within planetary cores. But Earth's internal heat will last for billions of years. The same radioactive elements that power geothermal springs and volcanic activity will continue generating heat long after the sun's death becomes a distant memory. In a strange way, humanity has traded dependence on a dying star for reliance on the more stable energy source of planetary geology. The settlements have calculated that Earth's core will remain warm enough to support geothermal energy for approximately 4 billion years, roughly the same lifespan our sun would have had if it hadn't mysteriously stopped working. It's as if the planet itself has become our new star, providing energy from within instead of receiving it from without. Nuclear power provides another crucial energy source. The few remaining nuclear plants that survived the initial catastrophe have been carefully maintained and their fuel recycled to provide electricity for essential systems. More importantly, nuclear reactors have been built in several settlements using enriched uranium salvaged from power plants and weapons stockpiles. We're sitting on enough fissionable material to power human civilization for thousands of years, reports Dr. Elena Rodriguez from her new position as head of energy planning for the Pacific settlements. The irony is that we finally have access to all the nuclear fuel we could ever need, and we're using it not for weapons or consumer energy, but just to keep our species alive. The social changes have been as dramatic as the technological ones. Without the economic systems that defined pre-catastrophe civilization, the settlements have developed resource allocation based purely on survival necessity and community contribution. Money doesn't exist. There's nothing to buy and no profit to be made. Status comes from expertise that benefits the community, growing food, maintaining heating systems, developing new technologies, teaching children, providing medical care. In Sarah and David Chen's Reykjavik settlement, they've developed what they call contribution economics. Everyone works according to their abilities and receives according to their needs, but individual contributions are carefully tracked and celebrated. The community's most honored members aren't former celebrities or wealthy executives, but a woman who figured out how to make antibiotics from fungal cultures and a man who designed more efficient heating systems. It's not utopian, Sarah explains to newcomers during orientation sessions. We still have conflicts, personality clashes, and people who don't pull their weight, but we can't afford to waste human potential on status competition or wealth accumulation. Everyone's survival depends on everyone else's contribution. The children born in this new world represent humanity's first post-solar generation. They've never seen natural sunlight, never experienced seasons driven by Earth's orbit around a star, never known scarcity as an artificial economic construct rather than a fundamental reality. Their play activities involve maintaining heating systems, tending growing areas, and practicing survival skills that would have been considered extreme preparedness just months earlier. They're not just adapting, observes Dr. Maria Santos, now working as a child psychologist in the Sao Paulo geothermal settlement. They're evolving, not genetically. That would take thousands of years, but psychologically and culturally. These children understand cooperation and resource management in ways that would have taken adults years to learn. 6-year-old Yuki exemplifies this evolution. She speaks 4 languages learned from international refugees in Tokyo Deep, can calculate optimal mushroom growing ratios in her head, and has an intuitive understanding of closed-loop biological systems that surpasses many adults. But she also creates art from salvaged materials, tells stories that blend Japanese folklore with post-catastrophe reality, and dreams of someday seeing the stars from the surface without protective gear. "I want to go outside and look at the sky," she tells her mother during one of their evening conversations in their shared sleeping space. "Not just through the windows, but really outside. Do you think the stars are pretty, Mama?" Akiko has to turn away to hide her tears. Her daughter will probably never experience surface conditions safe enough for unprotected human exposure. The atmosphere continues to thin as gases condense out in the extreme cold. Surface temperatures have stabilized at around -200 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide solid. But the settlements are developing surface exploration capabilities. Pressurized suits designed for extreme cold allow limited surface expeditions to scavenge materials and maintain essential equipment. These surface teams have become the heroes of the New World, 2-, brave individuals who venture into the crystalline wasteland above to gather resources that keep the underground communities alive. Frank Morrison's sacrifice wasn't forgotten. His convoy's route to Yellowstone has become a pilgrimage path marked with supply caches and emergency shelters. 3 rescue teams make the journey monthly, bringing new survivors to safety and maintaining the memorial cairns that mark where Frank's group made their final stand. They showed us the way, says Emma's daughter Lisa, who survived to reach Yellowstone and now leads one of the surface rescue teams. Every person we save, every family we bring home, it's because they mapped the route and paid the price for us to follow. The most remarkable discovery of these surface expeditions is that Earth's frozen landscape has become alien but beautiful in ways that defy description. Ice sculptures created by wind and sublimation tower hundreds of feet above the frozen cities. Aurora-like phenomena caused by Earth's magnetic field interacting with cosmic radiation unfiltered by atmosphere paint the sky in colors that have no names. But underneath this crystalline beauty lies the preserved infrastructure of the former world. Highways, buildings, vehicles, and technology frozen in place like a museum exhibit of lost civilization. The surface teams carefully catalogue and salvage useful materials, but they also document what they find, creating a record of the world that existed before the sun died. As Earth's 6th month of wandering comes to an end, humanity has achieved something unprecedented. We've survived the death of our star and established a sustainable civilization in its absence. The 27 geothermal settlements house approximately 2 million people, less than 0.03% of the planet's pre-catastrophe population, but enough genetic and cultural diversity to continue the human species indefinitely. More importantly, we've proven that consciousness and intelligence can persist even when the cosmic conditions that created them disappear. Earth may be an orphan planet now, wandering between stars in the cold emptiness of space, but it carries something no other rogue world possesses, a species that remembers starlight and refuses to surrender to darkness. We're writing a new chapter in the story of life, Commander Jiang Wei observes during one of his regular astronomical reports. Not just human life, but conscious life in the universe. Every day we survive, every innovation we develop, every child born in our settlements is a message sent to the cosmos. Intelligence doesn't give up, but the greatest test still lies ahead. Earth's journey has only just begun. In the years to come, we'll face challenges that will make the first 6 months seem easy in comparison. The atmosphere will continue thinning, resources will become scarcer, and the psychological impact of permanent exile from our cosmic home will test human resilience in ways we're only beginning to understand. Yet as Sarah Chen looks up at the alien constellations wheeling overhead, she feels something she hadn't expected: hope. Not hope for rescue or return to the way things were, but hope for what humanity might become in this strange new chapter of our existence. We're not the same species that lived under the sun, she tells David, as they watch Earth's first artificial aurora paint the sky in impossible colors. We're something new, something that learned to carry light inside instead of waiting for it to come from outside. The rogue planet Earth, carrying its cargo of stubborn, adaptable, dreaming humans, continues its journey into the infinite dark between the stars. 300 years have passed since the last natural sunrise. In the deep tunnels beneath what was once Tokyo, Yuki Tanaka, great-great-granddaughter of the woman who watched her child chase shadows in Ueno Park, tends bioluminescent gardens that have never known any light but what life creates for itself. At 26, Yuki represents the 7th generation of humans born in the underground world. She's taller than her ancestors, with enlarged eyes adapted to low-light conditions, and skin so pale it's almost translucent. Her hands, evolved for the delicate work of tending fungi and maintaining life support systems, move with a precision that would have amazed surface dwellers from the old world. The memory gardens are blooming beautifully this season, she reports to the Council of Depths, the governing body that manages Tokyo Deep's 50,000 residents. Sector 7's bioluminescent moss has achieved 92% coverage, and the new phosphorescent algae strains are producing 40% more light than last year's varieties. But Yuki's greatest treasure isn't the glowing gardens or the sophisticated closed-loop systems that keep her community alive. It's the photograph album she inherited from her ancestor, cracked plastic pages containing images of something called sunlight that the older generations insist once existed. She opens to her favorite page, a picture of a man smiling in what appears to be natural illumination, so bright it creates shadows on the ground behind him. The concept is almost impossible to grasp. Light so abundant that it created darkness simply by being blocked. Light that came from somewhere else instead of being carefully cultivated and preserved. Tell me about the daytimes again, Grandmother Sato. Yuki asks the settlement's oldest resident, a woman whose great-grandmother actually lived on the surface during the catastrophe. Ancient Sato, 93 years old and one of the last links to the surface world's oral history, settles into her chair beside the phosphorescent pond that serves as Tokyo Deep's central gathering space. Her stories are treated with religious reverence by the underground generations. In the daytimes, Sato begins, her voice carrying the weight of cultural memory. Humans lived on the surface of the world. Above us, beyond all this rock and earth, there was an enormous space called sky that stretched farther than you could see. And in this sky, there was a star so close and so bright that it illuminated everything. The children gathered around her, dozens of pale, large-eyed faces in the algae light, 24, listen with the same fascination their ancestors once reserved for fairy tales. To them, the surface of ancient, the world sounds like mythology, a place where light came from outside, where humans lived exposed to vast emptiness, where water fell from above instead of being carefully recycled through biological systems. The star was called Sun, Sato continues, and it was so powerful that humans could see its light even when they weren't looking directly at it. It warmed their skin. It made plants grow in the open air. It created the weather. But why did it stop working, Grandmother Sato? Asks 7-year-old Kenji, whose eyes are so adapted to low light that even the settlement's brightest bioluminescent areas seem dim to surface dweller standards. Nobody knows, little one. The ancients called it the betrayal or the death of the sky. One day the sun simply stopped making light, and humans had to learn to live without it. What Sato doesn't tell the children, what's considered too disturbing for young minds, is that humanity has become something unrecognizable from the species that once lived under starlight. The underground populations haven't just adapted, they've begun evolving into something new. In the London Deep Settlement, Dr. Amanda Chen, Tae-Sti, descendant of Sarah and David Chen, studies the genetic changes that have occurred in just 15 generations of underground life. Her research lab, carved from the bedrock beneath the former Thames, contains the most comprehensive genetic database of post-catastrophe humanity. We're documenting evolutionary changes that should take thousands of years. She reports via the underground communication network that connects all 27 major settlements. Enhanced low-light vision, increased lung capacity for low-oxygen environments, improved calcium absorption for underground living, and most remarkably, enhanced cooperative behaviors that appear to be genetically encoded. The changes aren't just physical. Humanity has developed what anthropologists call cavern culture, social structures, and belief systems, adapted specifically for permanent underground existence. Children learn navigation by echolocation. Adults communicate through complex systems of touch and vibration that work in absolute darkness, and communities make decisions through consensus methods that would have been impossible in the competitive surface world. In New Zealand's Rotorua Deep, the Maori concepts of kinship and environmental stewardship have evolved into the philosophical foundation for post-solar civilization. Aroha Williams's great-great-grandson, Tane Williams, serves as both spiritual leader and chief engineer for the settlement's expansion into deeper geothermal zones. Our ancestors understood that humans are part of the earth, not separate from it. Tan explains to the monthly gathering of settlement representatives via radio link. Now we live literally inside the earth. We've become part of its body, sharing its warmth, breathing its breath through the ventilation systems we've created. Rotorua Deep has achieved something remarkable. They've created the first stable underground ecosystem that actually improves over time. Their biological systems have become so efficient at recycling nutrients and managing waste that the settlement produces surplus food, clean water, and even excess energy that's shared with other Pacific region settlements. But perhaps the most significant development is the children themselves. The underground generations display cognitive abilities that appear to be adaptations to their enclosed environment. Enhanced spatial reasoning, improved memory for complex systems, and most remarkably, what researchers call collective intelligence, the ability to solve problems as groups that no individual could solve alone. 10-year-old Maya Patel, living in the Yellowstone Deep Settlement, exemplifies these new human capabilities. She can navigate the settlement's 200 miles of tunnels in complete darkness, using only sound and air current patterns. She's memorized the chemical composition and maintenance requirements for every biological system in her sector, and she's part of a collective of 12 children who work together to solve engineering problems that challenge adult experts. "Watch this," Maya tells visiting researchers, leading her collective to a malfunctioning water purification system. The children don't discuss strategy or assign roles. They simply arrange themselves around the problem and begin working in perfect coordination. One child monitors chemical levels, another adjusts flow rates, a third modifies biological filters, while the others provide tools and materials exactly when needed. "They're thinking as a single organism," observes Dr. Park, now in her 70s but still leading research efforts. "It's not telepathy or anything supernatural. It's social evolution accelerated by survival pressure." These children have learned to merge their individual cognitive abilities into something more powerful than the sum of its parts. The settlements have also developed remarkable technologies adapted to their environment. Bioarchitecture, using genetically modified organisms that grow structural materials. Closed-loop systems that achieve 99.8% efficiency in resource recycling. Communication networks using bacterial colonies that can transmit information through chemical signals over vast distances. But the most impressive achievement is what they call deep agriculture, food production systems that use the Earth's internal heat and carefully managed ecosystems to grow crops in conditions that would be impossible on the frozen surface. Mushroom forests that tower 40 feet high in underground caverns, algae farms that produce proteins and vitamins, insect colonies that provide sustainable protein sources. "We're not just surviving down here," explains Chief Agriculture Officer Lisa Morrison, descendant of Frank Morrison, the farmer who died trying to reach Yellowstone. "We're thriving. Our food production per capita is actually higher than many pre-catastrophe agricultural regions. We've learned to work with natural systems instead of fighting them." The settlements have also maintained an advanced human culture in ways that would have seemed impossible during those first desperate months. Children learn multiple languages, study mathematics and science, create art from bioluminescent materials, and compose music adapted to the acoustic properties of underground spaces. In Tokyo Deep's Cultural Center, young artists create sculptures from crystallized minerals grown in specialized biological vats. Musicians compose symphonies that use the settlement's ventilation systems as instruments, creating haunting melodies that echo through miles of tunnels. Writers document both the oral histories passed down from the surface world and the new stories emerging from underground life. Yuki Tanaka has become one of the most celebrated artists of her generation. Her medium is living light, amai, sculptures, and installations created from carefully arranged bioluminescent organisms that pulse and change over time. Her masterpiece, Memory of Sky, fills an entire chamber with flowing patterns of blue-green light that supposedly represent what clouds might have looked like. "I've never seen the sky," she explains to children who visit her installation, "but I carry the memory of it in my genes, in the stories my ancestors told, in the dreams that come to me sometimes. This is what I think beauty looked like before we had to create all beauty ourselves." But the underground generations face challenges their ancestors never imagined. Resources, while carefully managed, are ultimately finite. The surface world, now at -300 degrees Fahrenheit, has become completely inaccessible. And perhaps most troubling, some settlements have begun experiencing psychological problems related to permanent confinement. The condition is called tunnel syndrome, a form of depression and anxiety that affects some individuals who've never experienced open spaces. Symptoms include claustrophobia, obsessive behaviors related to light conservation, and in severe cases, what psychologists call surface dreams, hallucinations about vast open spaces and light sources too bright to look at directly. "It's not universal," explains Dr. Chen during a medical conference connecting all settlements. "About 15% of our population shows symptoms, usually beginning in adolescence. We think it might be genetic memory of surface life conflicting with underground reality. Treatment involves carefully controlled exposure to larger spaces within the settlements, meditation techniques adapted from pre-catastrophe practices, and in some cases, assignment to surface maintenance duties, AS, brief expeditions to the frozen world above that satisfy the psychological need for openness while providing essential services. The surface maintenance teams have become legends in underground culture. These brave individuals, wearing advanced protective suits powered by portable heating systems, venture onto the crystalline wasteland above to maintain solar collectors, which now function as heat absorbers, service communication equipment, and conduct scientific observations. Their reports describe a world transformed beyond recognition. Earth's surface has become an alien landscape of ice sculptures that tower thousands of feet into the thin atmosphere. Aurora phenomena, caused by cosmic radiation interacting with Earth's magnetic field, unfiltered by substantial atmosphere, paint the sky in colors for which no names exist. "It's beautiful in a way that hurts to see," reports surface team leader Jackson Cole, preparing for his monthly expedition from Yellowstone Deep. "Like the whole planet has become a work of art created by forces too big for human comprehension. But it's also completely hostile to life as we knew." The teams have discovered that some surface structures remain remarkably preserved in the extreme cold. Buildings, vehicles, and infrastructure frozen solid, but structurally intact. They've created detailed maps of recoverable resources and established supply caches for potential future expeditions. But perhaps their most important function is psychological. Knowing that the surface world still exists, that it's accessible even if hostile, helps maintain human connection to the broader universe. The surface teams bring back photographs, mineral samples, and stories that keep the underground populations connected to the larger cosmos. As the 3rd century of underground life concludes, humanity has achieved something unprecedented in the history of conscious life. We've survived the death of our home star and created a sustainable civilization in Earth's interior. The 27 major settlements now house 3 million people. The population has slowly grown as living conditions stabilized and improved. More importantly, humans have demonstrated that intelligence and consciousness can persist even when the cosmic conditions that created them disappear. We've proved that life can create its own light, its own warmth, its own meaning in the face of an indifferent universe. But the underground generations are beginning to dream of something more than mere survival. In workshops and laboratories throughout the settlements, engineers and scientists work on humanity's most ambitious project yet, the possibility of returning to the stars. "We've learned to live without the sun," young Yuki tells the Council of Depths during a presentation of her latest research. "But maybe it's time to learn to find a new sun." Her proposal, developed by a collective of the underground's brightest minds, involves the construction of a generation ship powered by nuclear fusion and FLOC, geothermal energy, a vessel that could carry human civilization away from Earth's frozen, wandering and toward distant stars that might welcome new forms of life. "Our ancestors adapted to underground living," she continues, her pale eyes bright with excitement. "Maybe we can adapt to star traveling. Maybe we can carry the light we've learned to create out into the universe and find it a new home." The proposal will take decades to evaluate and longer to implement. But for the first time since the catastrophe, humanity is thinking beyond survival toward expansion. The species that learned to live in Earth's heart is preparing to reach for other worlds. In the depths below Tokyo, beneath London, under Yellowstone and Rotorua and 23 other geothermal sanctuaries, the children of the underground are growing up with dreams that stretch beyond the tunnel walls that define their world. They are the inheritors of Earth's deepest secrets, masters of life in artificial light, carriers of memories from the daytimes, and creators of beauty in the eternal night. They are humanity's future, and they are not content to merely survive. The age of the underground is drawing to a close. The age of the star seekers is about to begin. 10,000 years have passed since the last natural sunrise. In the deepest archive of what was once called Tokyo, the most sacred relic of human civilization rests in a climate-controlled chamber carved from the bedrock beneath the former city. It's a photograph, cracked, faded, but still visible. A man lifting a laughing child toward the sun, their faces bathed in golden light that no living human has ever experienced. Yuki Sato Tanaka, descendant of both the woman who watched shadows dance in Ueno Park and the keeper of the oldest stories from the daytimes, approaches the photograph with the reverence her ancestors once reserved for religious icons. At 35, she represents the 300th generation of humans born in the underground world, and she is about to become the first human in 10 millennia to see actual starlight with her own eyes. "Today," she announces to the assembled crews of the generation ship Times New Dawn *, "we carry this memory back to the light." The ship itself represents the culmination of human engineering across centuries of underground existence. 3 miles long and half a mile wide, * New Dawn Times was constructed in the vast caverns beneath Yellowstone, powered by fusion reactors that recreate the nuclear fires that once burned in Earth's abandoned sun. Its hull contains libraries holding every book ever written, genetic samples from every species humanity managed to preserve, and most importantly, 10,000 volunteers who've chosen to leave Earth's warmth for the cold uncertainty of interstellar space. Dr. Amanda Chen Park, now 93, and the oldest member of the expedition, runs her fingers along the ship's fusion core control panel. Her ancestry traces back to both the London couple who picnicked in Hyde Park and the NASA scientist who tracked Earth's first steps into cosmic exile. She's spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Fusion reactor status, optimal, she reports to the Launch Control Center buried 2 miles beneath Yellowstone. Gravitational drive, ready for activation. Life support systems, functioning at full capacity. All primary systems show green across the board. The Times, New Dawn Times, represents more than just transportation. It's a complete civilization in miniature. Its growing chambers use advanced bioluminescent agriculture that can support the crew indefinitely. Its workshops can manufacture anything from computer components to clothing. Its social areas provide space for human culture to continue evolving during the centuries-long journey to the stars. But most importantly, it carries the genetic diversity and cultural knowledge necessary to restart human civilization around a new sun. The crew includes representatives from all 27 underground settlements, ensuring that the full spectrum of 5 post-catastrophe human adaptation travels with them. Engineers who understand closed-loop biological systems, artists who create beauty from living light, children whose minds work collectively to solve impossible problems. This isn't abandonment, explains Captain Sarah Morrison Williams, whose lineage traces back to both the Iowa farmer who died trying to reach Yellowstone and the Maori leaders who helped humanity learn to live sustainably underground. This is pollination. We're carrying the seeds of human consciousness to new soil. Earth's 27 settlements will continue thriving for millions of years, powered by the planet's internal heat. But Earth itself continues wandering through space at 67,000 miles per hour, moving farther from any hope of encountering another star system suitable for surface life. The Times New Dawn asterisk, however, has a destination. 10,000 years of observation and calculation have identified a solar system 47 light-years away, where a star similar to Earth's former sun supports planets that might welcome terrestrial life. The journey will take 800 years at the ship's maximum velocity of 6% light speed, enough time for 25 generations of crew members to live and die before reaching their new home. The probability of success is impossible to calculate, admits Dr. Elena Rodriguez Zhang, the ship's chief scientist and descendant of the astronomer who was calibrating equipment when the catastrophe began. We don't know if the destination star will still be stable when we arrive. We don't know if the planets will be suitable for human life. We don't know if our ship's systems will function properly for 8 centuries. She pauses, looking around at the crew members making final preparations for launch, pale, large-eyed descendants of surface dwellers, adapted for life in artificial environments but dreaming of natural sunlight they've never experienced. But we know something. More important, she continues. We know that consciousness and intelligence can survive cosmic catastrophe. We know that life can create its own light when the universe fails to provide it. And we know that the human spirit refuses to accept endings as final. The launch itself represents an engineering marvel that would have been impossible during Earth's surface-dwelling era. The ship must break free not just from Earth's gravity, but from the planet's trajectory through space. Launch tubes carved through 5 miles of solid rock provide the initial acceleration, while fusion rockets take over once the ship reaches open space. In the hours before departure, the underground settlements coordinate their most elaborate ceremony since the catastrophe. Every settlement contributes to a global communication network that will allow 3 million underground dwellers to witness humanity's return to the stars. Kenji Watanabe, now 57 and one of the first children to demonstrate collective intelligence capabilities, leads the Tokyo Deep farewell ceremony. His community has contributed both Yuki and 49 other volunteers to the Times New Dawn's Times crew, including some of their most skilled bioengineers and cultural preservationists. We are not saying goodbye, he tells the assembled crowds in Tokyo Deep Central Chamber. We are saying, see you among the stars. Whether in this lifetime or the next, whether in this solar system or another, human consciousness will find its way home to the light. In Yellowstone Deep, the launch preparations take on additional significance. This is where the ship was built, where the fusion technology was perfected, where humanity's greatest gamble will either succeed or fail. Launch control operates from a facility that extends 6 miles beneath the surface, surrounded by redundant life support systems and protected by enough rock to survive even a catastrophic launch failure. T-minus 60 minutes and counting, announces Launch Director Thompson Park, whose family has managed Yellowstone Deep's technical operations for 12 generations. All systems nominal. Weather conditions on the surface are, well, irrelevant since we're launching through 5 miles of solid rock. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Humanity's return to space exploration launches not from a gleaming spaceport under open sky, but from the deepest underground facility ever constructed, powered by Earth's internal heat rather than solar energy. In the ship's observation deck, Yuki holds the sacred photograph, YI, the image of sunlight that has inspired 10,000 years of human persistence. Around her, fellow crew members prepare for a journey none of them will live to complete, toward destinations none of them will see, carrying hopes that transcend individual lifespans. My ancestor watched her child chase shadows created by starlight, Yuki tells the small group gathered around her. Today, we chase the stars themselves. T-10 minutes and counting. Throughout the underground settlements, 3 million people pause in their daily work to witness this moment. Children stop tending bioluminescent gardens. Engineers halt maintenance on geothermal systems. Artists set aside their living light sculptures. For the first time since the catastrophe, the entirety of human civilization focuses on a single shared experience. T-1 minute and counting. All systems green. Fusion reactors at full power. Launch sequence initiated. The Times, New Dawn Times, sits in its launch chamber like a cathedral of human ambition. Its hull bears inscriptions in every language spoken in the underground settlements, messages of hope and determination, written by children who dream of seeing natural sunlight. Its cargo holds contain not just supplies and equipment, but carefully preserved seeds from Earth's former surface, soil samples from every continent, and water taken from the deepest oceans before they froze. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Launch. The ship accelerates through the launch tube at forces that would have killed unprotected humans, but the crew lies in specially designed acceleration chambers that allow them to survive the tremendous G-forces. Rock walls blur past as Times New Dawn Times climbs through miles of Earth's crust, breaking free from the planet's gravitational embrace for the first time in 10,000 years. On the surface, automated cameras record the moment when humanity returns to space. The ship erupts from the frozen ground like a flower blooming in reverse, its fusion drive creating a brilliant column of light visible for hundreds of miles across Earth's crystalline wasteland. For a few moments, artificial sun illuminates the landscape with light brighter than anything seen since the catastrophe. Launch successful, reports Mission Control as telemetry confirms the ship's escape from Earth's gravity well. New Dawn is free and climbing, all systems nominal. Crew reporting successful transition to zero gravity. In the ship's command center, Captain Morrison Williams activates the external cameras that will give the crew their first view of space in 10 millennia. The screens flicker to life, showing Earth falling away below them, a dark sphere wrapped in ice, dotted with the warm glow of 27 geothermal settlements like jewels embedded in frozen rock. But it's the view ahead that takes their breath away. Without atmospheric distortion or light pollution, space reveals itself in overwhelming glory. Billions of stars blaze against the cosmic dark. Galaxies spiral in impossible distances, and nebulae paint the void in colors that have no earthly names. "My God," whispers Dr. Chen Park, tears floating away from her eyes in the zero gravity. "I'd forgotten how beautiful the universe is." The crew gathers at the observation windows, many seeing space for the first time in their lives. These humans, adapted for underground living, with pale skin and enlarged eyes, stare out at the cosmic ocean their ancestors once called home. Course laid in for the Kepler 442 system, reports Navigation Officer Jackson Cole Patel, descendant of both surface maintenance teams and underground agricultural specialists. Estimated travel time, 814 years, 4 months, 16 days. Fusion drives operating at optimal efficiency. As Times New Dawn Times accelerates away from Earth, its crew begins the long process of adapting to life between the stars. The ship's internal structure mirrors the underground settlements they've left behind, with growing chambers, living areas organized around communal spaces, and workshops where human culture can continue evolving during the journey. But this isn't merely survival, it's expansion. The crew includes some of humanity's most creative and innovative individuals, tasked not just with reaching their destination, but with advancing human knowledge and capability during the journey itself. We have 8 centuries to become something new, explains Chief Cultural Officer Maya Reeves, whose role involves ensuring that human society continues developing during the long journey. By the time we reach our destination, we'll be as different from current humanity as current humanity is from the surface dwellers who lived under the sun. The children aboard Time's New Dawn Times will grow up in true 3-dimensional space for the first time in human history since the catastrophe. Zero gravity allows freedom of movement impossible in underground tunnels, while the ship's rotating sections provide artificial gravity when needed. These children will develop spatial reasoning abilities beyond anything seen in the underground settlements. As Earth shrinks to a point of light behind them, the crew settles into routines that will define their lives and their descendants' lives for centuries to come. Work shifts maintain the ship's systems. Educational programs ensure knowledge transfer across generations. Cultural activities preserve human creativity and expression. But most importantly, the crew maintains hope. Every day brings them closer to their destination. Every generation born on the ship represents another step toward humanity's return to natural starlight. The journey won't be easy. 8 centuries in space will test human psychology and engineering in ways no one can predict. Equipment will fail and need replacement. Social conflicts will arise. People will be born, live their entire lives, and die without ever setting foot on solid ground. But humanity has already proved its ability to survive cosmic catastrophe and maintain civilization in impossible conditions. The species that learn to live in Earth's heart can learn to live between the stars. Years pass. Asterisk. New Dawn Times becomes humanity's first successful interstellar civilization. A city flying through space, powered by the same fusion fires that once burned in the sun. Children grow up speaking languages that blend words from every Earth culture, playing games invented in zero gravity, creating art that could only exist in the 3-dimensional freedom of space. Status report, year 27. Captain Morrison Williams records in the ship's log. Population stable at 10,043 individuals. All primary systems functioning within normal parameters. Morale remains high despite no external reference points for our location. The children born aboard ship show remarkable adaptation to space-based living. She pauses, looking at the photograph of sunlight that now hangs in the ship's central command center, surrounded by bioluminescent plants that provide both oxygen and beauty. Most remarkably, human culture continues evolving. We're not the same species that left Earth. We're becoming something new, adapted for space, for long journeys, for carrying consciousness across the void between stars. Whatever we find to our destination, we'll meet it as representatives of life that refuse to surrender to cosmic indifference. Centuries continue to pass. The original crew dies, replaced by their children, who are replaced by their children's children. But the mission continues. Knowledge passes from generation to generation. Skills improve. Technology advances. Hope persists. In year 412, New Dawn Times passes the halfway point of its journey. The destination star appears not as a point of light but as a visible disk. Spectroscopic analysis confirms the presence of planets, including at least 2 in the zone where liquid water could exist on surface. "We're no longer traveling toward hope," reports Captain Chen Morrison, descendant of multiple crew lineages and representative of humanity's space-adapted evolution. "We're traveling toward possibility, real planets, real chance for surface life under natural starlight. The final centuries of the journey involve intensive preparation for arrival. Manufacturing systems produce equipment for planetary exploration. Biological laboratories prepare Earth life forms for potential introduction to new environments. Educational systems ensure that arrival generation crew members understand both their mission and their heritage. In year 798, the destination system's planets become visible as disks rather than points of light. Initial observations reveal water, atmospheres, and conditions that might support Earth-based life. "It's beautiful," reports the ship's observation team, "like Earth might have looked from space during the daytimes, blue and white and green, alive." In year 814, the Times, New Dawn Times, enters orbit around Kepler 442b, a planet 97% Earth's size orbiting in the habitable zone of a star remarkably similar to Earth's former sun. Initial atmospheric analysis shows oxygen, water vapor, and chemical signatures that might indicate life. Captain Tanaka Chen Morrison Williams, CB, her name carrying the genetic and cultural heritage of multiple Earth lineages, stands in the observation deck that has shown 8 centuries of crew members nothing but empty space and distant stars. Today, for the first time, it shows them a world. "Landing teams, prepare for surface operations," she announces to a crew that represents humanity's 25-generation adaptation to space-based living. Today, human consciousness returns to natural starlight. The surface expedition includes representatives from every original Earth settlement lineage. They carry with them samples of Earth soil, seeds from Earth's former biosphere, and most importantly, the sacred photograph, the image of sunlight that inspired humanity's longest journey. As the landing craft descends through alien atmosphere toward an unknown world, expedition leader Yuki Sato Tanaka Chen holds the photograph up to the window. Outside, natural sunlight, time, the first to touch human skin in over 10,000 years, streams through atmosphere onto landscape that might become humanity's new home. "This is for everyone who kept the memory alive," she whispers, thinking of the millions of descendants still living in Earth's underground settlements, still maintaining civilization in the planet's warm heart. "This is for everyone who refused to let consciousness surrender to the dark." The landing craft touches down on solid ground under an alien sun. The crew's first steps onto planetary surface mark humanity's return to natural light after 10 millennia of artificial illumination. They plant a flag that bears the symbols of all 27 underground settlements, representing the persistence of human civilization through cosmic catastrophe. They establish a base camp that will become the foundation for humanity's second chapter among the stars. But most importantly, they look up at the sky, truly open sky, with clouds and weather and light that comes from outside rather than being carefully created and preserved. "My ancestor chased shadows created by starlight," Yuki says, feeling natural warmth on her face for the first time in her family's genetic memory. "Today, we've chased the stars themselves and found them willing to welcome us home. The sun that rises over humanity's new world isn't the same star that nurtured Earth's biosphere for 4.5 billion years, but it's a star that chose to accept refugees from cosmic disaster, survivors who carried consciousness across the void and refused to let intelligence surrender to universal indifference." Behind them, the Times New Dawn Times orbits silently, ready to return to Earth with news of humanity's successful colonization. The journey home will take another 8 centuries, but it will carry the most important message in human history. We survived, we adapted, we found new light. On distant Earth, still wandering between stars, 3 million descendants continue thriving in the geothermal settlements, powered by the planet's internal heat and sustained by the knowledge that somewhere among the stars, humanity has found a new dawn. The species that learned to make its own light in the darkness has returned to natural starlight. The journey from catastrophe to resurrection is complete. And in the photograph that traveled between stars, the image of a grandfather lifting a laughing child toward the sun, the promise is finally fulfilled. Human faces are bathed in golden light again, not as memory, but as reality. The age of the underground is over. The age of the new dawn has begun,